Okay, so the pledge, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, January 25th, 10 a.m. This is a workshop for the Curry County Board of Commissioners. Thank you. To my left, I have County Council, Commissioner Gold, myself, Commissioner Huxley, and to my right, Commissioner Boyce. The purpose of this particular workshop is to convene for a Curry County Civic Public Education Government Operations Workshop. And the company Brandt Media, who's the operator of the county's government TV channel, is seeking board direction on specific items pertaining to the operation and the content of the channel. And we had, with the public notice that went out, was a one-page agenda to give people or anyone interested in an overview or an idea of some of the types of things that they would wish to address. They may choose not to address them, they may add, but I think it was a pretty good map of what the objective or purpose was. And I'm going to open the comment. We won't have public comments, but open the presentation to Charles Douglas with Brandt Media. Charles?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners Boyce and Gold. It's really a pleasure to be before you in this capacity for the first time. My first presentation, along with my business partner from Brandt Media, namely Nick Brandt, was with this board in a different composition, of course, about almost 14 months ago now. So this has been a long process going back to December of 2015, and we're really thrilled to have gotten this ball over the goal line and gotten Curry County back on the air and back running the channel. As you can see behind you there, that's your confidence monitor to let you know that you are live on TV right now. And of course, when we say live on TV, we mean two different products simultaneously. You are live on your Charter Cable Channel 182. You're also live on your live stream, which will, as your website gets redeveloped, be a live stream box that'll be incorporated with your Board of Commissioners page as you develop your new website with Revise, of course, which is a separate agreement. So what are we doing here today? Well, again, I'm Charles Douglas. I'm the operations manager of your channel, Curry County Civic. It's your property, all the equipment we installed for you, that's all your stuff, and this is all for you to be able to be transparent and accountable to the people, the taxpayers of Curry County, and a way for you to be able to communicate directly and not through a media filter what's going on with the county and what you'd like to communicate as far as public services, as far as getting a two-way line of communication going, finding out what the people are looking for from the county. So how did this process start? Well, you had a Channel 182 under your franchise agreement with Charter Cable. And under the terms of that franchise agreement, you were supposed to be providing so many hours of content on that channel per year. And of course, because the equipment was getting old and malfunctioning, that wasn't occurring anymore. Your channel was, the term we'd use in the industry is in black, essentially was non-broadcasting for almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that was putting the county in significant jeopardy of not only losing the channel forever under your franchise agreement, the cable company could just come in, scoop it away, and you never get it back. And additionally, if that had happened, all the PEG fees, PEG, the acronym you're going to hear me use a lot, is Public Education Government. This is a provision of the Cable Act of 1984 that then Oregon allows municipalities, counties, and cities to make agreements with the cable company. And essentially, it's a two-way street. They're using your public right-of-way. They're stringing their wires everywhere to sell their cable and internet services to local folks. And in exchange, the county gets a franchise fee, a portion of which you can use for PEG access operations. And the PEG fee specifically on cable subscribers is a segregated fund that has to be used for capital equipment to allow for public education and government access operations. And that can be the equipment to use to run the channel itself, and it can be the equipment to allow for audio-video broadcasting, both in this chamber, the Blue Room downstairs, in some distant day, if we get a public and education channel going, to operate that, to operate any equipment that they need in terms of field production equipment, a studio, all the highfalutin stuff that I went into some more length about with the former board, and I'm not going to spend too much time on today. But if the needs assessment we do down the line determines that there is a need and is a desire in the community to operate that sort of channel, then we can open up that discussion.
So how long had we been in the black? In other words, off channel?
I wasn't present at the time, of course, here in Curry County, but it was my understanding that it had been a situation that had been getting worse and worse for a couple of years. And it's an annual process by which Charter can assess your total programming hours. So it was certainly you were kind of riding into the red, into the danger zone there for a couple of years.
So we were in jeopardy of losing all PEG funds if we had not.
You would not only lose the PEG funds, you'd have to refund the funds you'd already collected for years, which, would be quite an arduous process.
And also they could have taken the channel away from us.
And they would have taken the channel, and you would have really had no recourse under the franchise agreement to get that back. Right. So that
it's a use it or lose it kind of idea, if that helps.
So the good news I'm here to give the Curry County Board of Commissioners is, well, your former board approved basically a 3-part process. Part A was the installation of our AV equipment here, mainly in the hearing room, but also some equipment in the blue room. I'd say mission accomplished there. We have a wonderful hearing room now that has a presentation system that works well, a teleconferencing system with this video unit, with microphones that allow everybody in the audience to hear you, listening assist devices for anyone who's hearing impaired, meeting your Americans with Disabilities Act requirements, and the cameras themselves to actually put you on the air, to put you live streaming, to record your meetings, and making those video on demand files available as well. We had a very successful maiden voyage with our friends from the planning department, Carolyn and her planning commission downstairs. We were live on the air with the planning commission from the blue room for the first time last Thursday as well. So part A was the actual installation of your, what we call the build of the AV equipment here in the 2 rooms here at your annex facility. Part B was something we basically punted to the county to buy directly in order to secure a pretty significant discount. And that was the purchase of your actual channel server equipment from Telview Corporation. And that's what allows your channel to be running content that you will approve. We'll get through in a minute as far as the content you want on there 24/7 on the cable channel, and also does a live stream of that channel 24/7 for viewers online. And that stream, what we would say, has a adaptive bitrate feature. So if folks want to watch it in HD and high definition, they can do so. Folks that have more limited internet connections, you can kick down to, the industry terms would be 360p or I think 284p, basically standard def or really substandard def levels. So if you have a dial-up connection, you literally could still get through and watch a slightly blurrier version of my beautiful face talking to you right now.
So how long would that take to do the dial-up connection? Like if our meeting were 2 hours, would it take them longer to watch it?
Well, so you might have some halting video here and there. It's not something where we're offering people to download the video, because that would be prohibitive, especially for someone on a slow connection. But they can watch the stream of it at variable bit rates depending on their connection. Okay. And basically the system auto detects.
I'm just trying to remember back to dial-up, and it was pretty
You
frustrating.
mentioned the auto detects, so you don't have, based on whatever service you have through your internet service provider in bit rate.
Right. It auto detects where how big your garden hose is, essentially. How much data you can take.
You don't have. You mentioned that you can adjust, but do you have to adjust, or does it automatically adjust for you?
It automatically does it for you. Wow. For the video on demand, much as you're probably used to if you've used YouTube at all, there's a little gear in the lower right corner where you can manually select what quality of video you want to watch that video at. So if you watch the Board of Commissioners general meeting from last week, you can select 720, 360.
So something will be down in that right-hand corner?
Right. Okay. And when I say 720, 360, 284, that's literally your pixel resolution. Okay. So 720 pixels high is beautiful high definition, and then downward from there to standard def and VGA, essentially. So finish part A, install the equipment. Finish part B, your channel's on the air, running 24/7, providing streaming and video on demand services. So now we're to the fun part as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I like crawling around in the roof running cable as much as the next guy. But as far as I'm concerned, the fun part and the part that's going to be of most interest to your citizens, your taxpayers, your voters is Part C. And Part C is the part that gets to go on from here now that A and B have been signed off as complete. Part C is your operations. You can set up the channel, you can set up the beautiful screens in here in the room, but then you got to run this thing. So that's where I come in. I'm, of course, here just about every week operating your Board of Commissioners general meetings, workshops, planning commission meetings. Of course, I'm not doing that right now because I'm in front of you all right now. So my intern, Jesse, Gold Beach High School grad, born and raised here, is running the equipment right now, and he has some experience running exactly this sort of equipment, over the hill, as it were, working for me in my other hat.
Good job, Jesse.
And good job, Jesse, up there. So that's the operations of your meetings, and also providing the services to upload those meetings, to make those links available, to run the programming of your channel, essentially programming your channel 24/7 with content that you approve. And also, of course, to meet those requirements under your franchise agreement to provide original programming, and as well as to serve the county needs to communicate with your citizens and, provide essential information that maybe a, 2, 3, 4, 7 hour C-SPAN style a Board of Commissioners meeting perhaps can't communicate as effectively, is that we're making up to 20 hours of custom, original, high-quality content for you. And that's what we'll be getting to later in the agenda, is to find out exactly what you want that content to be. But first of all, we want to provide you with a look at your branding for your channel, which we have branded Curry County Civic. And we'll show you that right now. Oh, there's that one.
Even got them flying.
All right, I'm seeing heads nod, so I'll assume I have consensus on that. Let Huddle jump in here.
That. Well, thanks. So when is that seen, or when does that play, or how does that work?
So we would use that as the term of art would be an interstitial, so as a buffer between longer form programming, also as a way simply to identify the channel, like before and after meetings, before and after meeting replays at different parts of the day, just to let folks know they're not just watching, Home Shopping Network or a leased access channel or something like that. They're watching a specific channel that is locally originated, and that's why we try to give it that feel of something that's from here.
Good.
Well, can we do commercials maybe and get a little money off that? Or?
You're
Always thinking.
Your channel, Commissioner Gold, is a by law a non-commercial channel. You can do PBS style underwriting, although doing that on a government access channel brings up perhaps less legal but more questions of taste and
then the question is how many people have watched. So.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. So we're talking about branding, and then I'm looking at something on the screen here. The shot you showed earlier, this looks more like what I would call our
Logo.
Right. So if we're doing, was there a reason why you didn't use our logo for this interstitial broadcast? And if you could talk about that, because now it sounds like we would, if we're doing branding, it's like trademark, all those kind of, like McDonald's has an arch, or UPS has colors, or brown, whatever.
So we've kind of gone from Mac Arch to the 1932
Something
River
we're
Bridge.
doing. We have two different things instead of one. I mean, it's okay to have more than one,
Yes.
but I just wondered if there was a reason behind that, or what the thinking was, and if that's a kind of decision you're going to ask the board to weigh in on today, whether they want to approve two or one.
And
Sorry,
what
Mr. Chair.
was done, from the history, because again, we were looking over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, clearly on this Section 12, which had to do with the approval process. And knowing that we weren't there yet because everything wasn't working, I had mentioned to Brandt Media, at that point, before we got there, use your discretion put something together so that we can see it. But on this particular one, for example, I think, and I'm not going, well, I'll speak for myself only. This is what they had come up with, and it's certainly out there now for commissioners to look at and open to approval, change, suggestions.
Absolutely.
Because now we're into that phase, but rather than wait, you know, until we didn't do anything.
To get back to Commissioner Gold's question, it's not intended, the Curry County Civic logo isn't intended, addressing Commissioner Boyce as well, to rebrand the county as something else. The county logo is as you all have said it from time immemorial or whenever that came out. The Civic logo is designed as a specific brand for the channel itself. And the reason for that is that the Curry County Civic will carry content, that you're going to go through an approval process of shortly, that includes county meetings, that includes special productions that we make at your direction for the county, but may include other content of government affairs, civic nature, like Oregon State Legislature, for example, is something we've been playing. You've seen the highlight video from Oregon Department of Transportation, ODOT, traveling the Oregon coast. That would be an example of programming that touches on Curry County, definitely makes Curry County look good along with Reedsport and lots of other places, but it's not something the county can take direct credit for. County didn't make it, ODOT did, right? County's not making the Oregon State House of Representatives feed, or the State Senate feed, or the Governor's State of the State address, or whatever content eventually goes in that channel of that nature. So we don't want to brand that content as if it were Curry County. However, we can brand the channel that features Curry County content and State of Oregon content and White House Conference on Aging content and whatever else that's government affairs related as all coming together under this channel that's online as well as on your cable channel. And so that was the reasoning for that.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr.
County
Chair.
Council.
Question then, the practice I've had in the past is, and I'm going to make an analogy here to a website. A lot of times a county website will have links to other non-county functions. For instance, maybe we would have a link to our health department who we contract with, or the dog people who we contract with, and those kind of things. A lot of times then there would be a disclaimer saying, we don't, and this is the legal part of stuff where you just say, hey, we're not vouching for any of the things that you get from one of these links. And so I don't know if we ever want to, and maybe it's something we can work on, but just put some kind of language to people who are watching this channel as you're talking about branding and content and those kind of things. It would be like, Curry County isn't responsible, and we may even have some language in this contract about who's responsible for contact between us and you, but kind of reminds me, so maybe we can work on some kind of a I don't want to call it a blurb, but essentially a blurb that just basically says, hey, this content's the county's, not all the content's the county's. If you have any questions, contact the county over questions on the content. But then my only other thought, and I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds here, maybe you could put Curry County Civic channel on there, just as a, and I'm just asking more than anything to see if it's helpful.
That's exactly what
the viewers.
Exactly what this workshop is for.
Just seeing if it's
exactly
helpful.
what this workshop
I'm just thinking
is
of
for.
putting on my person sitting at
No.
home watching TV hat.
And we're at the point now
Okay.
to have the discussion.
All right.
Exactly what it's for.
So you're saying a county council huddle perhaps a tag off to the side or maybe on both sides, like Charter Cable Channel 182, something like that?
Well, I would just write where it says Civic, just write the word channel under that, and then
Channel 182 right there. Okay.
or something, yeah. And then if you can make it look as nice as what you've got there, and then you and I, or I could work on some language of some sort of a disclaimer to let the viewing public know that not all the content, is Curry County's, and if they have questions to contact the county, kind of thing.
Absolutely. We're happy to hear that. And of course, that's why we've thus far curated and are going to be suggesting that you stick to content that's government sourced. We're not suggesting you air somebody's, obviously political opinions or something that's
Well, and that's
not
the
sourced
reason
from
to
a-
this
yeah.
point that I pretty much said,
Right.
you guys know far more about that, and I've been very pleased with the content at this point that's been put on.
And in the long run, of course, if there is a desire in the community to have the Knitting Club have a show, the Rotary Club have a show, the Tea Party have a show, whoever it is, that's where a second channel
Right.
for public and education access would come in. But again, we're way away from that right now.
County Council?
Correct. That's not part of our
No,
contract with
correct.
Brandt Media, and it's not part of the content that's on. And this is why when Charles mentioned that it is public education government, the statute says public education or government. So sometimes it says or, sometimes it says and, but the idea is that you can have a channel, of each, and we've only at this point are doing our Curry County government
Correct.
content channel. So that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just one quick comment, since this is a
Commissioner
workshop, I
Boyce?
don't want to bog us down. I have appreciation, very nicely done. Back to your point, Council Huddle on marketing, I'm not a big marketer, and we all sometimes think we are, but, my first or initial thought is staying with the same logo. Eventually, just personal preference, I'd like to have that same logo small on every sign we have, every car that we are responsible for. Just that consistency, not to detract from what you've created here whatsoever, but yeah, just throw that out there for now.
So Commissioner Boyce, as you can see in our live feed behind you there, the county meetings, Board of Commissioners, Planning Commission, the Curry County logo is on literally every second of every meeting.
Okay.
So we have tagged your actual Curry County content with that logo, and so literally if you're watching the channel right now, the only place you'd see Curry County Civic is like a channel bug in the lower right-hand corner, just off to the side, letting people know what channels are watching. But if you watch the video on demand online, you're not seeing the channel logo at all. If you watch the on-demand video of the Board of Commissioners meeting, you're only seeing that. You're only seeing Board of Commissioners, or my name or your name. The Curry County logo is always on the program.
Good clarification, thank you.
County Council?
Well, that kind of helps the concepts I was talking about earlier on the disclaimer or the branding. This is a channel that covers more or less our brand, which is displayed up on the logo there, and then you mentioned other government content. So it does make sense in some ways, along with the idea of having a disclaimer. This logo here would be more encompassing than just our very own brand. So that would fit in the idea of this is something slightly different than Curry County that we're providing. We don't own all of it, but what we do own, we'll have our own brand on. So
It might even be necessary, is what I'm
idea.
hearing.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, good.
I think it is one way to accomplish some of the legal ins and outs of information, presentation, ownership, responsibility, those kind of things. So I think what Brandt Media has done here makes a lot of sense in that context, and it helps to just kind of flush it out like this.
Very good.
Now we did do a little work on a county logo that hopefully will drive viewers to your website. Let me play that for you real quick. So that's an example, commissioners, of something, again, we would play in between programming. We could play during your recesses, because during your recesses, we're still live on the air. So we're kind of looping some content there to keep viewers engaged while you all have a lunch break or go to executive session or whatever's going on during the recess. But that hopefully will be the first of many examples of short form content that would simply incite viewers to give feedback to us, give feedback to the county, get engaged with their county government, with the different departments and services. So, and of course, we love your feedback on that as well.
Good.
Comment? Okay. County Council?
I liked it as well. So part of what I do is I work with Summer, and Summer manages our Travel Curry Coast website. That said, visit us anytime at our Curry website, and from there you can get a link to Travel Curry Coast. But if we're not limited on the words we can put in that black screen, if we could also say, or Travel Curry Coast, and again, it's just for the commissioners here, but that's one of our economic, travel features, and I just think that if that's something we're doing, again, it's just the commissioner's choice, just a thought, seeing how difficult it would be, and if that makes any sense to the board here is all.
Mr. Huddle, we're happy to make standalone short-form content directing people to Travel Curry Coast, and that's exactly the sort of feedback we're looking for, if that's what the commissioners would like.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, all right,
Super.
thanks.
So going to point two now.
Yes.
You just said, I wasn't sure, you said standalone. Does that mean you would add it to that screen, or it would be something different? I'm just checking.
We can add it to that screen.
Okay.
We can make the same interstitial, the county with the water effects, and put that website instead. So basically, you could have both running
I
at
see.
various times.
Okay.
So we can do
Okay.
basically an infinite number of combinations. It can be one, it can be the other, it can be both. I can do all three.
Very good.
And there's enough space on the channel right now that
And that's the type
more the
of
better.
thing
Yeah.
that, to this point, even though technically maybe it wasn't to be done this way, it was to allow them until this meeting,
Sure.
the creativity to do that, with no question on my part that it would fall within the guidelines
Sure.
of the charter communication
Yeah.
contract.
Definitely food for thought, and
Definitely,
helpful
yep.
to our
And then
workshop
when you
today.
see examples like this, it spurs other, gee, you did that, that's great, could you do this too? So this is exactly what I had hoped.
And the minute and a half, 2-minute tourism videos on that website, there's a couple that are on YouTube right now. That's exactly the sort of content, that's beautifully shot. Whoever did that for you did a great job, and that's exactly the sort of stuff we love to run.
So are you going to have like the fill-in time, a tour of Curry County and all its beauties, and then you put that travel website on there?
That's exactly when we get to looking where your direction is as far as us creating content. That's exactly the direction
Right.
one of the directions we'd like to go. Absolutely. So just real quick, talking about your current content running on the channel and the content report. I'm not putting this on the air, Jesse, but I'm just going to show y'all. This is kind of the internal workings. This is how I'm putting stuff on your channel. This is literally our interface for that TeleView gear that county purchased and we installed for you. So literally, this is an as-run report of first-run content. Under our contract, we were to make your channel go live 24/7 starting in January 1st. Just as a little early Christmas present to the county, we actually went live as of Christmas Eve. And since Christmas Eve, so 31 days as of today, we've been running content on your channel 24/7. We only had your old Board of Commissioners meeting in standard F format to go on at first. We added some state legislative hearings as we went forward, including the opening of the House and the Senate over in Salem recently. But as you can see here, we've had 80 hours and about 30 minutes of first-run content premiering your channel in the last month. The vast majority of that were your old Board of Commissioners meetings for about the last half of 2015, plus
16?
2016, thank you, Commissioner, as well as the state legislative hearings we were able to grab off of their website, and then a few pieces that you all seen from ODOT and PSAs from the Association of Oregon Counties and the Federal County Association, talking about why federal policies matter to counties, why counties matter providing public services, all stuff that we were mortally certain would fall within the safe zone as far as content that you want your local residents to know. Actually, one of those pieces talked about safe or secure rural schools act funding from the federal government, so seemed pretty timely considering what's going on. So of that 80 hours, we've had about 15 hours of first-run content originally produced for the county, namely the 2 general meetings, the workshop 2 weeks ago, and your planning commission meeting. So all that put together, we're on the glide path to meeting your requirements under your franchise agreement to keep your channel, to keep your PEG funds rolling in, and to stay on the air. And honestly, if you look at the quality of what we're broadcasting and what we're streaming, what we're providing video on demand, Curry County, I heard it said, and it kind of made me cringe sitting back there running your meeting last week. Somebody said Curry County is the worst reputation in the state. Well, what other counties look like this? Jackson County does, I know from personal experience. But, you know, a lot of counties aren't on the air at all. Or if they are, it's blurry video, poor audio, hard to understand folks, hard to know who's talking. Curry County at this point looks better in terms of vidlive broadcasts than the state legislature. And what that says about the folks in Salem, I'll leave for others to judge. But they shut down their Oregon channel about 5 years ago, and Oregon since got an F as far as transparency. I'm not going to go into any political points about that, but you get my point. You guys sound clear, you look clear, you're providing needed content to the folks in Curry County, and I think it makes the county look good that your meetings are in sparkling high definition, clear, crisp audio, and the whole 9 yards there.
Question?
Yeah.
Did you have a
Kind
comment?
of scary, actually.
Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that was my quote, and I'd love to take some credit for what you're doing here, but sorry, I won't be able to do that. But it is part of the comeback, and I appreciate it, and hopefully I won't be making that quote anymore, but
right.
I have good optimism. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so rebranding the county, as far as we're also rebranding and rebirthing your channel, definitely part of our process is trying to rebrand the county and trying to present a fresh face for y'all. So again, 80 and a half hours original content the first month, even less than the first month as far as our contract period, 15 hours so far, plus however much we're running the clock today of first run content. So we're going to be able to keep your channel. We're going to be able to keep your PEG funds rolling in. That means we're going to be able to continue as the years to come, providing upgrades to this facility. And again, if the needs assessment we'll eventually conduct with public and education folks out there determines it warranted, then those PEG funds could also go towards providing those services for educational institutions and members of the general public here in Curry County as well. But again, that's a bridge to cross another day. So that's what's running on your channel right now. We have state legislative hearings. We have these PSAs from the American and State Associations of Counties, and we have some ad council PSAs that basically came pre-Christmas wrapped in our server. You know, you've all seen ad council ads. They're very vanilla sort of public service announcements, and we have what the county has created. So if I will look to the county to ask your direction whether all that sort of content. Obviously, you approve of your meetings, or we wouldn't be doing this today. But all that other content, state and federal county association content, ODOT and other state government-generated content, state legislative hearings, is that all content that the board, by consensus, is generally comfortable providing your viewers on your channel?
County Council?
Thank you. I think you listed a lot, and then you mentioned the ad council. I don't know enough about what, if the ad council is an NGO or something, and so, and if they are similar to some other NGOs, then we may be, you know, so the other ones, you know, the state legislature, ODOT, this, that, and the other, but I would want just some more time to look into, you know, kind of as a gatekeeping function, you know, who we do and don't offer broadcast time to. So it sounded like you said we're putting ad council spots on there, and I just wanted to check that. And
Absolutely.
Also, what I'm assuming is that you're modeling our webpage after the other government web pages channels that you've done, and
Precisely.
that they perhaps are also doing ad channels. So it may have been vetted before, but just I have my own duty to you all to where I have to be comfortable with that and explain.
How do we want to have that informally set up?
I think between me, if it's okay with the board, I can just work with our contractor and.
I think that the direct line is certainly the best way
All right.
to do that. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just
So
have a question, but no hurry.
one little question.
Can I answer Mr. Hill's question
Oh,
just real
yeah,
quick?
sure.
So the ad council has been around. I just popped up their website for
I
you.
was doing the same thing.
Has been around since 1942. Essentially, it's pretty much intermeshed with national broadcasters. It started with CBS and NBC and works with National Association of Broadcasters, so pretty much the big boys of the country as far as television creation. And it runs PSAs to encourage adoption, encourage traffic safety, encouraging wearing seatbelts, here's your brain on drugs, all that sort of very general audience content. When I say ad counsel, it's literally advertisers donate a portion of their profits to make nonprofit wholesome messages. So these are not ads, these are PSAs, public service announcements, and they're pretty much the gold standard as far as content that any broadcaster in the country can play. They're made freely available to any broadcaster, cablecaster in the country to spread wholesome messages. It's certainly not UN Agenda 21 NGO sort of stuff.
That wasn't, well, no, that wasn't what I was thinking.
That's good.
And just for,
Well, it's good that you're just able to pull it up and show us, and I say, I certainly support leaving it, informally to have county council deal with you.
Yeah, and we're happy to provide you all.
Yeah.
We have about 10 of those in the server. We're happy to provide all of them to you to check out.
County
sure,
council.
and I'm on the Ad Council website as well, and just listing their campaigns. They have 5 different categories. Education, so they talk about financial literacy, high school equivalency, learning and attention issues, supporting minority education, teacher recruitment. They have family and community, adoption and foster care, caregiver assistance, discovering nature, and job training and employment, hunger prevention, fatherhood involvement, shelter pet adoption, some wildfire prevention, health, addiction support, autism awareness, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, safety, buzz driving prevention, child passenger safety. It fits within some common themes, sex assault prevention, but then there's some particular ones: Louisiana flood relief, Hurricane Matthew relief. So and I think and then of course the classics, they call them: AIDS prevention, American Red Cross, Peace Corps, Savings Bond, United Negro College Fund, Women in War Jobs. So there's just some that have been around a long time. But again, I think I would like to still kind of track these down and figure out, what it means if we decide to put that group on. But I'll work with our vendor on
great.
it.
So can we pick and choose
Absolutely.
out of these categories that we want?
Sure thing.
Okay. And then also, do we have to have special permission from, say, the state legislature to?
That's public property.
Yeah.
Okay.
You, me, all of us as taxpayers, we're paying for that, so we own it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think,
I'm
Commissioner
sorry,
Boyd?
go ahead. Well, thank you again, Mr. Chair. You mentioned legislative committees. I'm very interested in that. It's kind of like we will have our own C-SPAN. And by the way, we have Mr. King in the audience. I think C-SPAN originated in Massachusetts back in the 80s. And so my 2 older boys are in their early 40s now, and growing up as little kids, when that channel would come on, they would absolutely run out of the house. But my question is this: the legislative committees, how are we going to decide which committees we would, in preference of covering them?
Thank you, Commissioner Boyce. I agree completely that it's not a matter of being able to run every committee that occurs in Salem, because when the legislature fires up for its full-time 135-day session on February 1st, there will be multiple simultaneous committees meeting. There isn't enough programming time on the schedule to run those, and of course we don't want to crowd out all of Curry County content just to be the Salem channel. So we actually, I was tracking your new representative, Mr. Smith, and what committees he's on. I need to find out what committees your state senator as well is on, and we would want to certainly prioritize those. Obviously, I'm looking for board direction, but it's obvious to us that natural resources-based committees, considering the county's economic base, would be a pretty logical fit over some maybe more urban-centric ones.
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to work on that or assist, or just if you need help. It sounds like you may
I think
not.
direct is the best way to do that, and I think, again, I'm not going to speak for Commissioner Boyce or Commissioner Gold, but I think direct communication with you as is applicable or appropriate, just like with county council.
I think direct communication, but then in commissioner reports reporting back to, and department reports reporting back to the whole board publicly of what.
As far as what had been accomplished or the direction they were going, I think that's.
Yeah, I think whatever we put on the channel should be really centered around what's important here in Curry County.
And hopefully that more loose, I would phrase it, communication would alleviate, and that was a concern that we had talked about earlier, monthly meetings like this, just to do it informally rather than have separate workshops on a monthly basis to discuss what we're doing.
That would help us all be on the same page, at least give us that opportunity there.
It's just a matter of the total time that would be consumed. And that's what I think we didn't want to really get into necessarily for every month, have to schedule a formal workshop so that we could discuss amongst ourselves, do it individually, and then commissioner comments at a general meeting. Just by your way, for an update, Commissioner Boyce, speaking, we did this, or Commissioner Gold, we did that. I think it would eliminate a lot of not necessary meetings like this. That would be certainly my suggestion.
I really agree with
That's a
your
good
premise
thing.
there, and I'm pretty confident now you're already on track for what would be appropriate for Curry County.
I
Thank you,
certainly
Commissioner.
believe so. Yeah.
So am I sensing the general consensus of the board that prioritizing state legislative committees that are your local representative and senator are serving on, that obviously already are natural resources centric committees, that's what you would like to prioritize?
I agree with that, Commissioner Boyce.
First priority, but obviously not limited to.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Did you have?
I agree also.
Okay. I think too on this, when we're talking about the legislative session, that this now, we've talked about this county channel or the 182, this can also be accessed. You do not have to be a subscriber to Charter Cable in order to watch this streaming. You can watch it if you have internet access. You can go online, and we're going to be providing very shortly, they're working on a iframe, basically insignia through IT that I would hope in the next few days will be put on the homepage on the county website and also on the commissioner meeting page, so that anyone who has internet access can go and watch the live streaming channel 182. You do not have to subscribe to Charter Cable for that, and I think that's just an extra bonus as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. As somebody who works in this industry, I don't subscribe to cable. So I operate completely depending on those live streams. But of course, because of the nature of PEG funding under the law, we have to operate the channel as well as the stream in order to keep those funds rolling in as well. So going forward from here, a couple of things that we'd like to get your consensus on as far as custom content, or kind of your first custom content beyond the pair of branding items that I showed you earlier, is we would like to make a custom meeting intro and outro video, no more than 30 seconds, probably 20 seconds for the outro, for your Board of Commissioners meeting, for your Planning Commission meeting. That would basically invite viewers, here's when the meetings are, here's where they are, show where they are, direct folks to your website in terms of letting folks know when they tune into a Board of Commissioners or a Planning Commission meeting or some special event that this is an item from the county. The county is doing this to provide transparency and accountability, and the county is inviting public participation and public feedback. So that's the intention behind a government meeting intro and outro video, and these, again, it's modeled on what other government access operations do for their local government clients.
No, go ahead.
How do you, and I'm definitely for that, but I think this would be a good example of typically how we want to do, be it a 30-second clip, a 20-second clip, a 15-minute clip. How do we want to work that informal approval before it's posted, and pasted up and put live? What are your thoughts or suggestions on
So,
that for informal approval?
So, Mr. Chairman, when myself and Nick and Jesse, when we develop something to a state where we think it's in final draft format, what we would like to do is we can upload to that same video on demand server the draft of your government meeting intro video or your swearing in ceremony that I shot at the beginning of this year. And we can put that up on our video on demand server as essentially an unlisted link. So we would not put it in a playlist. So you can't access the Board of Commissioners playlist
basically,
and see the sort of content that you all haven't approved yet.
Okay.
And so we would want to provide a final draft, and it'll be labeled as such in the metadata, in the description. and then simply look for feedback from the board as far as, do you all find this to be something that you can live with, or that hopefully you're even enthusiastic about and that you want us to put on your channel.
So you would send us that link, this is a question, then we would have access to that because it's not listed.
That's what we would,
Which is the way a lot of that, reviews like that go on all the time. And then we would just individually get back and say that looks great, or.
Correct.
So you'll send that via email, the link?
Is that okay?
Okay.
Is that okay with you, County Council? With that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. County.
You may have just.
Sorry, Commissioner Boyce.
It's okay. You may have just answered it. I assume that the intros are graphic and no audio.
There would be basically a voiceover narration. We're going to hire a professional voiceover performer, as it were, and do something to the effect of, "Welcome to your Curry County Board of Commissioners meeting. These general meetings are held every first and third Wednesday at 10 a.m. here at the Curry County Annex. And meanwhile, you'll see a video of the annex outside. You'll actually show people, how to get here, essentially. Your Board of Commissioners invites you to participate in these meetings, and you can go online to co.curry, et cetera, to watch these. And here's your Curry County Board of Commissioners, and basically you all, if you approve this, every meeting you start, essentially we'll coordinate this with Chairman Huxley or whoever the chair is in the future, where when the chairman gives me the signal, or Jesse, or whoever's the operator, the signal to start rolling, you'll see that 30-second video start playing. And essentially when that video finishes, it'll fade to the wide shot of this room. And that way you're on the air. So essentially it's a way to have a clean opening to every meeting for the county.
So, Mr. Chair, that's going to take some production time, and I assume this is included in the contract.
Correct.
Okay.
And we've shot most of
Do it
the
for free.
and we've shot most of the B-roll, essentially, most of the
What is the B-roll?
the footage that we'd incorporated in the final product. We've shot most of that already. I was out shooting your annex, and I'll use
Or
some.
this clip that you're
Right.
talking about, or these two clips here. And
Precisely.
And contractually, there are 20 hours, you correct me if I'm wrong, contractually 20 hours of actual video, final cut, edited video time in the contract.
Separate from your meetings.
Separate, oh yes, completely separate from the meeting, custom, which is what he's
20
talking
hours?
about here, 20 hours. And that's from 15-second clips to 1-minute clips to 15-minute clips. And it was for, again, the contract was for final edited time. At so much, I think it was $500 per hour ultimately of final time. And then it interfaces into, and it may come up here too in your agenda, to interfacing with the respective departments, for example, to have them to be able to work with you directly for clips to promote their departments. For, I think there was something on possibly, I'm not sure if it's on or off, on a big FEMA presentation coming up, but pretty much as creative as you can imagine, but to give some autonomy to the various departments to promote their departments and what they do, or the commissioners or county council.
I was wondering if we're at that point yet where we were going to talk about the departments getting you feedback or not, or if you're there yet.
We can move straight there, Mr. Huddle. Just to
get us off track.
Yeah.
Just to answer the chairman's question. So if these were a set of 4 30-second spots, essentially you've taken your 20 hours of custom production time per year and subtracted 2 minutes. So while these are tended to be high-quality spots and we're putting a lot of work into them as far as the number of shots we're mixing in, it's going to be a very minor subtraction of the production time we've committed to make for Curry County. Obviously, it's going to be the longer form content, the half-hour piece featuring Sheriff Search and Rescue, featuring the animal shelter, featuring Curry Community Health, what have you. That's going to be the bulk of the raw production time, hours, minutes, and seconds.
Did that help?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Well, our ratings are going to be so high, we're going to be competing with the big guys, I'll tell you.
Well, and the good thing, Commissioner Gold, is that when we're making these pieces for you, it's not just to play on a channel. It's something that ideally, if the sheriff really loves my piece on the search and rescue team or what have you, that's something then they can put on their department websites and that they can feature there. And probably in the aggregate, they'll end up getting more viewers on that individual website with the on-demand web content, and that's ideal as far as we're concerned. We want,
That's a good thing.
by any media necessary is kind of our ethos here. We want to hit them on cable, hit them on the live stream, hit them on website video on demand, whatever it takes.
We're going to be the stars of YouTube pretty soon. I know it.
So generally, I'm sensing a degree of comfort from the board with the government meeting intro and outro clips.
I would say yes.
Yes.
Mr. Royce, Commissioner Gold?
Right.
And the other item that we have shot most of the principal footage of is the swearing-in ceremony for the 2 commissioners, of course, as well as the other countywide elected officials, and that was
And
over
then you
in the
could
courthouse.
upload that to link for review, and we see how that works out.
Correct.
The
County
question,
Council?
thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I had about the swearing in, I assume, there's a large volume of content on that. Would individual elected or officials who are sworn in, would they have any kind of a, editorial input into what is broadcast out of all that content as far as respecting their particular part? I wouldn't think they could say, oh, I don't want that other person, but is that something that goes into the production? Is that how the process works?
When we get to the point of making the video highlighting the work of the district attorney's office, of the assessor's office, of office department XYZ, then absolutely we intend for them to have editorial control. If it's a county-wide event, which is essentially how I would classify that, I really would leave it to the board to determine whether you all feel comfortable with that. If it's a highlight of the county fair, if it's a highlight of, what have you, that's a county-wide sort of event.
All right.
So do you airbrush the faces and make us look better, or just curious?
I think my colleague Nick Brandt's editing that video, so I'll have to leave that to him. I'm gonna bounce that in his court.
Not better.
I'm the one who filmed it, so that's my
you
fault.
Get rid of the wrinkles. Whatever.
I don't think so.
We all have better things to worry about, don't we?
Well, I mean, the point is, I guess, to be cinema verite about it, to get all highfalutin, is to show folks what happened in a more documentary sort of format. But
Have to bring a little levity once in a while.
absolutely.
Right
So definitely. As far as the running time, the whole event was 40 minutes. I think our intention is to make something like a 15-minute actual final production, cut out the pauses and the slow points, and give people the meat on the bone.
And that would be a good first example for other departments as far as this is what a possibility. Now take
Precisely.
it wherever, as far as your imagination, what you might be able to do.
So moving on to point 4, the process for approval of future content. We kind of already touched on this, that the board would like drafts provided via a non-public posted link for the board's review. If I was to work with, say, Carolyn from the planning department, make a 15-minute or half-hour piece highlighting their work or highlighting the work of the district attorney or the sheriff, what have you, is it the intent of the board that I submit that to the board for y'all's approval as well? Or would you prefer that I work directly with the relevant department head on that?
County Council?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I think we might be getting to that section of
Item
our
12,
contract.
Number 12.
Sure, and so Summer provided you with the printed out version. It's on page 3, section 12. So this is something that when Nick Brandt of Brandt Media and I were drafting this contract, we were talking about the exact thing that Charles is bringing up, who basically takes ownership of a particular departments, the road department, the sheriff department, the planning department, content. And my intent, I think Nick's intent and consensus when we wrote this and when we crafted this, if you look at it, it says the County Board of Commissioners shall have approval authority over all content produced by contractor or submitted by county departments under this agreement. So the starting point is the Board of Commissioners would have approval authority of all content, even of another department. I think what what we thought there then is that the county department shall be allowed to submit 1 half-hour segment to the contractor for production per year. And then any deviation from this shall require board approval. So that led to some question. The boards approves all content, but then the departments can submit a half-hour per year to the contractor. And I think what Charles and I were trying, what Nick Brandt and I were trying to do during that discussion was to have a half-hour carve-out of board approval. In other words, if the planning director, development director, community development director prepared some content, if it was only a half hour, that could go directly to the website without board editorial approval or anything like that. And that's what I think Nick and I were trying to do, because the idea is to get the content and the message out of the departments. But then I think the board, and then it just says content shall be property of the county, but any deviation from this shall require board approval. So that's what that was meant to do, to say the board approves everything, but we've got a 30-minute carve out per department per year, and any deviation from that 30-minute carve out. Drafting is not more of an art than a science, I suppose, is what it said sometimes. It could be more clear, but what the chair talked to me about, and I think what we're getting at is that how the board would like this? Can we get consensus from the board at this meeting today? Does the board want to essentially review every bit of content that a department submits to the contractor to tell their department story? Or is the board okay with giving departments 30 minutes of time per year of their own message, and anything more than that? Like, let's say a department said, well, I got way more than 30 minutes to talk about. Would the board, then I think they would have to come back to the board, because we were trying to figure out how do we manage, the sharing of our, I think you call it a garden hose or something, but the sharing of our content amount. So,
well, we talked, again, as county council said, we talked about it, and even though it may have been not ideally worded, I think the intent was, and I certainly would personally support that, to give autonomy to the departments for this 30 minutes to deal directly rather than get somebody else in the middle of it. And I even am more confident that that will work based on what we're seeing as far as the initial content that's being produced up, and put online anyway. So I've certainly,
I just have one question.
Would propose that interpretation for sure.
Are we ultimately, as commissioners, responsible for all of this material, though? That's my question.
yes, the county owns it, and so yes, the answer there is yes.
Okay, so then if that's the situation, I think we should, have some say-so in the loop.
Go ahead, Commissioner Boyce.
I don't want too relaxed of an arrangement here, because it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. I would want some prior approval, and I'd have to just believe that I'd be required to fulfill that responsibility.
Now, Commissioner Boyce, would this be a situation where, say, I worked with the sheriff to make a half-hour piece? Would you want me to come up with a final draft, get his or her approval, depending on the department head, and then provide that draft link to the board for a final checkoff?
Yes. That would be my preference.
I think since
So,
the buck stops here, so to speak, yeah, we probably should do that.
I'm okay with that, and I think we will be pleased with the results, but still have that final okay.
Well, you have a good understanding, and so I'm very content with that.
So,
Okay.
so
So I think
just
that's
to
the
reiterate then, you want to just reiterate that, County Council?
Sure. The departments will work with the contractor to develop media for broadcast. The contractor will establish a link for the board to review. To me, it sounds similar to almost our agenda review process. The agenda is put in a place where the board can look at it and check it off, and then of course, those would come back to us at a meeting. And what I would prefer, because in some sense, that could be seen if 3 members of the board vote or decide on content. So I think you can do that as long as there's some record publicly, and maybe it comes back at a meeting, and like we talked about the reports, where it says, you know, this will confirm that, you know, the sheriff department presented a 30-minute video. We've all looked at it, and
Even on a consent calendar or
I
something.
think so, Mr.
that
Chair.
doesn't-
You go.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I'm really not comfortable with having something where you all are.
All of a sudden, it's a public meeting.
It's a
Yeah,
risk.
yeah,
It's a risk,
yeah.
and I always try to counsel against all that. So-
Okay, and before it even comes back to us, it's kind of approved by the departments
Yes.
theyemselves.
They've created
Yes,
it. Yeah,
it's-
they.
it's-
I think
they're
submitting it.
satisfied with it. It's just
Yeah,
a
I don't think
final-
you mentioned that in your
final
verbiage
review.
just a minute ago.
Apologize. Thanks. So I
So-
think.
Yeah,
I think-
Mr. Huddle, we're perfectly comfortable even drafting a report for each new piece of production and providing that in the format you determine for your consent calendar. That's perfectly all right with
Nice.
us.
I like it.
Commissioner
Since
Boyd?
it's only once a year, I don't have a concern we're going to be bogging down the momentum that we're trying to accomplish here. Is that fair to say?
I'm not sure I followed that one.
Well, because
It's only-
they get 30 minutes.
Each
Oh,
department.
yeah.
I think
Okay.
the one part where it might happen more a year is if a department has more than a half hour they want to talk about, and then they would come to you, but that's.
Or if they have smaller clips. I don't expect that every department's going to want a
Yeah.
30-minute clip. That's a long,
Do we,
If the assessor only wants 15 minutes, that's
But-
fine with us.
yeah.
do we have,
Or, no, but I'm saying, or if they want two 15-minute clips for
Absolutely.
30 minutes, or 3 10-minute, or 6 5-minute clips.
do we have, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Do we have a variance process here in this
What do you mean,
contract?
variance now?
Well, if they needed to go more than 30 minutes or,
Approval of the board.
great, thank you again.
All content that's original production for the county under that 20 hours is all stuff that the county has to approve prima facie because it's by you. It'll have that Curry County logo on it. It's your baby.
So question, if they go more than 30 minutes and want more time here, are we going to have to pay you more?
No, we're dealing with 20 hours total, so that's what's in the pot, if you will, the timer pot.
Okay.
And to try and be fair with everything, originally we talked about 30 minutes, and then we see as we progress throughout the year.
Precisely.
Right.
It's
So
going to be a
if we-
pretty safe ceiling.
Yep, if we have
But that's
six departments or 8 departments, 30 minutes each is going to be 4 of those 20 hours. And
So
then the
20
question
hours
is
is a
what-
lot of
what do we do?
content.
What do we do with the rest? And some departments may say, well, I'd like, they'd come to the board for permission to have
Exactly.
more of that 20
Okay,
hours.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we're not paying
Okay
more.
with that?
Yes.
Okay?
I think if we exceeded the 20, we would. So.
He wouldn't charge us, though. He's so sweet.
So one example that we have on screen there is the FEMA workshop. That's been scheduled now for 2 p.m. on March 1st. That's going to be a workshop that's Carolyn has called for, and I believe it's going to involve the FEMA floodplain maps, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be a question of how you want us to treat that sort of production. Is that a public meeting that falls under the rubric of Board of Commissioners meetings, workshops, Planning Commission meetings, because it takes place in a facility that's pre-wired for this purpose, either this room or the blue room?
If I may.
Yes.
Interrupt, and I don't know in this particular case because the planning director, Carolyn Johnson, talked to me earlier today or yesterday, I forget. It's that may still, based on all the what-ifs, they may proceed, they may not proceed with that. So I don't know positively if we're on, and I know I just heard this today, but
Oh, okay.
and I commented also that on things like this that you try and plan as far out in the future as you can. If there's going to be a change, it's imperative that as soon as we want to make a change in that schedule that we let Brandt Media know also. Did you, Carolyn, I don't know, did you want to add anything to that or not at this time? Pardon me? Just quickly, because you brought up the FEMA, I wouldn't even address this if you
Absolutely.
had
Happy
not
to take
brought
questions.
that up.
Sure. Carolyn Johnson, Community Development Director. Yeah, I need to talk to you about that separately, but I think the basic question is if we have some kind of an oddball meeting like this, how do you want it to fall in the?
Okay.
So,
Okay.
thank you, Director Johnson. So that falls on our proposed 2017 master calendar, which we've already got basic direction just implicitly. It talks about in our contract if I can pull that back up. It talks about how we have a prediction, we'll see if this prediction comes true, of a 120 hours of live government meeting time that's going to occur in calendar year 2017. And again, that's Board of Commissioner general meetings, Board of Commissioner special meetings, if any. I don't have any scheduled yet. Board of Commissioners workshops, Budget Committee meetings when those come up, and we'll touch on that in a minute, and your Planning Commission meetings. So straight up C-SPAN style government meetings that occur in pre-wired facilities. So that's this hearing room we're in right now, or in the blue room downstairs. Separate from that, here's your program production. So what we in the industry would call a field production. We go out and we film sheriff search and rescue racing the boat down the river, or go out and film public health immunizing kids, or whatever that production is that we work with the department heads on, as well as programs that we can work directly with you on outside of these meetings as well. That would fills up that 20 hours. So which one would you categorize that FEMA workshop as if it takes place? We kind of want some direction on that. And more generally, is this a master calendar on screen here that you all are comfortable with? Obviously, the general meetings, first and third Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Commissioner workshops, second and fourth Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Obviously, always subject to cancellation if you don't have a workshop. Planning Commission meetings, third Thursdays of the month at 5:30, as we had for the first time last week. And then we had, I wrote in some things here that I'm looking for more specific direction on, and I'm glad our budget officer's here to perhaps provide some clarity as well, is judging by what you had on your website last year for how your budget process came about. You had some kind of town hall meetings in the evenings the last week of April back in 2016. One was in Port Orford on a Monday, then Tuesday was here in this room, here in this building, and then the Wednesday was over at Brookings City Hall. What we would kind of suggest doing is that the meeting in this room would essentially be like a budget committee meeting or a board meeting, and we consider that part of your meeting time. If it was a field production that I have to get field gear out and set up a production hours in advance over at the library in Port Orford, then we would consider that part of that 20-hour kind of special field production budget, if that's what you all want to do, if you want us to film that. And similarly, Brookings City Hall, that would kind of be a special case, and that would pend some sort of IGA, some sort of intergovernmental agreement that you all might consider coming up with the city of Brookings. Because Brandt Media, prior to us ever working with the county, installed a TriCaster video audio system over there at Brookings City Hall. So if you were able to secure the kind agreements of the city recorder and the kind folks at City of Brookings, then potentially myself or another operator could just jump right on that system and run that meeting, record it. It would be live on, I think, their channel, not ours, but it could certainly replay on our channel pending their agreement. And so that would be an example of using a pre-wire facility. We would consider that essentially part of the 120 hours, part of a pre-wired facility C-SPAN style government meeting. But certainly this Port Orford thing, there's no gear there. We'd have to bring in gear and that there'd be a significant cost involved with that.
I think on the town halls, the way that was not included in any of the 120 hours on the worksheets, because I had, you know, the 120 hours was derived from handwritten worksheets going back over the actual, all the videos for every meeting that was held in 2015. They were identified as workshops, special meetings, general meetings, and the total plus a little extra buffer came up to 120 hours, but that did not include the town hall. So that would be I think if that comes up, we'd have to address that separately as a board.
Mm-hmm. So if you're not ready to make that decision, that's okay, but we included it in this draft of a master calendar just to make you aware of what we see coming on the radar and whether that's what you see coming on the radar as far as it being a televised meeting. You're not required to televise a town hall meeting if you don't want to. It's just something we might suggest is something typical of a government access station, especially given the importance of your budget process.
You mentioned this draft. Now, we haven't seen it.
So this is my presentation to you, basically kind of putting in written form what we've been talking about this whole time is what you want televised, and that's kind of the direction we're looking for. The other element of the budget process that I just want to touch on real quick, something else I observed on your 2016 meeting progression, is that you had basically a week of budget committee hearings held in this room the second week of May. 10 a.m. like board meetings, and some of those went a couple hours, some of them lasted all day. You had a variety of department presentations. The budget officer can jump in any time if I'm wrong here. If you want to get a mic.
Louise Colstrom, County Accountant. I wasn't here last year. I was hired in August. But I've seen the schedule, and it looked like that the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday were budget interviews, and they were all day. Thursday, there was the actual deliberations by the budget committee and the budget approval. And then Friday was reserved for if that went longer. So it could be 4 to 5 days. And I don't know, because I wasn't here, what the actual time that was used on those days. I was only looking at a schedule, but they looked like all-day meetings
And we don't know
for
either,
those 5 days.
because some of that, and I can't say for 16, I can say for 15, because that's a long story. We have no permanent audio or video record, accurate record for that that budget
So
process.
all I could go by is what the schedule was.
Yeah.
And it looked like people were scheduled all day long for, well, the organizational part of the meeting, the budget message, the budget presentation. There should probably be public comment at that time. And then starting to interview department heads, which took 2 to 3 days after that. And then, of course, the budget approval process. So I would say that would be probably at least 3.5 to 5 days of time.
And Luis just yesterday came up with a preliminary, I'll call it preliminary, but pretty in-depth schedule on that
that'll
process.
be going in the board packet, and it will be a proposal of a budget calendar for the 17-18 budget process, and it will hopefully be adopted by the board at the February 1st meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a
Yes.
question through the chair to the county accountant. So is our interpretation of what will happen this year based on what happened last year in terms of these 3 town hall meetings and then that week of budget committee meetings, is that substantially
I do not
similar?
know anything about
Yeah,
the
I
town
don't,
halls, if they're
that
even
was
going to
sort
be
of a-
scheduled, or if it was a special event last year. I don't know. We haven't
I don't
discussed
foresee
town
it,
hall.
but I just speak for myself. I don't foresee it this year with everything else that we have going
Well,
on
we
with
do
the
have
budget
that.
process, but that's just
Yeah.
myself.
Do we know, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Boyce?
Do we know how well those 3 meetings were attended?
I was there, they was not much of an attendance, no. Yeah, not much of an attendance. Yeah.
I was concerned that might be the
Yeah.
reality,
And
so
then
that
the
might help
reality,
us.
they were
And then-
public meetings, you get into, which we have to be cognizant of, when we schedule, and we went through this yesterday with Luis and myself, or the day before, there's a lot once you schedule a public meeting. You have notice, you have minutes, you have, it's extensive. But I don't
And I think
personally
that- I
see
think
the
that
town
this,
halls.
Citizens Budget Advisory Committee is kind of in place of these
Yeah.
town hall
Excellent point.
meetings. It's
Yeah,
actually
yeah. And
taking that place in a longer
Yeah.
process.
But
and
that's
more
not going to be videoed or anything like
No.
that. That's
It'll have minutes, but it
incredible
won't.
fast track on that one.
So if I can interpret the will of the board via nodding, these town hall meetings, I should just strike through. That's off the table
I
for
would.
now.
Luis?
I would, because I think that this, like I said, that committee, the Citizens
The CBAC.
Advisory
Yep.
Committee
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
replace those town hall meetings.
However, the formal budget committee for the county, second week of May, is that tentatively something that we can
That-
expect to occur?
That is what I have on my proposed calendar.
Okay.
those dates.
I think Commissioner Boyce had a.
I just want to commend you for catching that, because it's generated some good discussion and some planning here.
And-
I think we may have a consensus on what we do. We just
Yeah,
found it out.
I think
Thank you.
And I think also, Charles, you know, like if we can, when you know, after the meeting, if we can get a copy of your draft,
Absolutely.
and then I think for each commissioner, then we can have time to look at it and even just, again, in commissioner comments, it doesn't have to be super formal necessarily. I think some of these things, the less formal, as long as you know, it's communicated, the better. The shorter it is and the more concise and succinct it is. But if we can do that, then we can get back to you, I think, very quickly as you know, after a consensus of the board and confirm some of these
And just as
calendars that you're talking about
Just
here.
as a point, in June, there will be a budget hearing, a public meeting that's a budget hearing. It's usually held immediately before the last general session board meeting of the month, and that after the hearing, then you start your general session board meeting, and during that boarding meeting, the board will adopt the budget. So
And through the chair.
that is a public budget law, local budget law requirement to have that hearing, and it's advertised in the paper with the financial.
And that way the public will have an opportunity to give their input.
It was quite a schedule that Luis was working on, quite a schedule.
Through the chair, if I can just ask a clarifying question. So would that budget hearing, would that take the place of a Board of Commissioner general meeting or workshop, or would that be a separate budget committee meeting?
It will be immediately before one, and I don't know how much public comment you got. The school district I worked for,
very little.
we allowed 10 minutes because we
Yeah.
never had any public comment.
Yeah, very little.
So it's just, but it is a scheduled, you know, so like if you budget the hearing at 10 o'clock, then you would actually start your board meeting at 10:15.
Correct. It wasn't a whole standalone anything. It was
But
just
you
a
know
very
what?
But you
short
do have to allow
time
public comment.
space within a general meeting, but it was a public hearing.
Under the circumstances that we're dealing with this year, you might want to allow more time
And
for
you
that.
Well,
And
there
you
was. But it was a firm time to start that public hearing. There was not it must end by
Yeah.
Yeah.
time.
I bet you're going to
Yeah,
have more
yeah.
public comments this time.
So touching on Commissioner Gold's point there. So for example, say you have this blank space that you usually don't have a board meeting on a fifth Wednesday. I'm looking at May 31st here.
Mhm.
If you were to schedule that hearing conceivably for that day as a separate item, separate from a general meeting or a workshop, essentially a special meeting of the board, the contract says we need a minimum 72 hours. Obviously, if we can A, put it on the master calendar well ahead of time, or B, get at least a week or two's notice, just like we had from Carolyn for a special planning
Right.
commission meeting 2 weeks in advance. They're having one next Thursday. That's the sort of advance notice that really helps us
Yeah.
be,
I
on
think we
hand
can
for
all
you.
be,
But the
you know,
proposed
sensitive to
calendar
that.
shows that on the 21st of June, it's actually just before that meeting. So if the meeting regularly starts at 10 o'clock, the hearing would start at 10 o'clock.
Mhm.
And then the board meeting would immediately follow the hearing once that was adjourned.
okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
We run our company via Google Calendar, so that's what's going on there.
That's super.
So this is the point where we're kind of looking for that vision thing, as President Bush the Elder would have put it, that vision thing from the board, separate from the department packages that'll work with the sheriff, the district attorney, and so forth on what they want. That's not going to fill all the hours, as we just touched on. So what sort of work is the board interested in us creating for your channel? Some of the things we have in mind, just as an initial punch list, are station identifications, so different beauty shots,
And
but
that's
also
on,
shots
that's on
of...
item 6
Yes,
on
item
your
6.
agenda.
So you'll definitely be airbrushing those, right?
Oh, I meant more the natural beauty, the natural bounty of Curry County.
More levity.
You know, I was
from Sue,
out
this
there.
is good.
I was out there shooting Arch Rock. I was out there shooting, Brookings
Yeah.
Harbor. All of that sort of.
Catch it after the driftwood came in?
I missed
Last
the
weekend?
driftwood. This was last week before that, but different landscape beauty shots, but also shots of industry, of folks. One of the themes I'm hearing from the board is putting Curry County back to work. So different shots of our different local industries and economic drivers.
You know
So,
what, maybe some successes that have happened as far as economic development, like BC Fisheries going in. I bet he'd be more than happy to let you go in, and that's Mike Manning, go in and do some shots of his seafood processing place, which would be great.
I think even on, Commissioner Boyce?
No, I'd just be real surprised if he doesn't have a video available that he could
It
offer.
wouldn't surprise me if he
Yes.
does.
But either way, that as an example, I would say, again, that an individual commissioner that might have an idea like that, start the process direct, and then we would go through the formalities that we've talked about following communication like that. County Council?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think there is a public purpose served. I think we want to make sure that it, again, we
Yeah,
mentioned,
not-
can we do
not a plug,
commercials
but
or those
sure.
kind of things. So it's a balance, but we'll try to keep a thumb on it there. The other thought I was having is, we have some parks, some things that we do, and I don't know how much of this is covered on the Travel Curry Coast website, but if it's ours, and I know the Parks Department may have their own half-hour content, but I understand we have some spectacular parks and those kind of things, which are features as well. That was the only thing I could think of that might make sense, even though they'll have their own bit.
And really highlight the parks that are part of the county that are bringing in revenue, right?
Those kind of things, right? The Flores Lake Park is a real successful campground for us, and I think I've heard Lobster Creek as well, and that's the park
Right.
I haven't ever been to yet. I'd like to see. So
Yeah.
Or you might not have to go. You
I
could just see it on
virtually.
Right now, he could take you by boat.
But I think even items like this will then create other ideas as we see these things evolve.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
We may
Department
not
by
we may not
department.
fill that.
We may not
that
have to
whole
go
20
anywhere,
hours.
yeah.
Well, we may not fill that whole
Yeah.
20 hours in the first week. We may leave
Oh, no,
some
no,
of it
no, no,
open
no,
for
no.
later.
No, I don't. That's a lot of hours, I think, a lot more than people might think.
And
for content.
And speaking, Mr. Chairman, of other ideas emerging as we start rolling these products out, is we'd like to put some short invitational pieces essentially on the channel, inviting public feedback. What would you like to see on Curry County Civic
That's
is
a
an
good
example
idea.
of something we like. One other idea, and we'll see if the commissioners think about this one, is something we've seen for, again, other counties that shall remain nameless, is a piece called Ask the Commissioners, where literally we solicit questions from the public. And of course, the commissioners have meeting time when they can answer whatever questions they so choose. But this would be more sort of designed as a 3 to 5 minute package that we could play as a short piece throughout the day, where Commissioner Gold, Commissioner Boyce, Commissioner Huxley are just answering a question sent to an email address that we'll provide on screen, and as a sort of way of providing sort of direct one-on-one communication, but then opening that up for the whole county to appreciate.
We could have our attorney pre-screen those.
No claiming Fifth Amendment.
If the commissioner doesn't want to answer it, then we're not going to bother to film it. So yeah, that's how that
I think
works.
that's a good, it's more creativity, and we have some tools here that can be used. It's just a matter of using them and getting a good message out there.
And more broadly, a thought that my colleague Nick had was a full profile piece for a more feature-length full profile piece for each commissioner, to get to know the commissioners, in other words.
What if we're
And-
shy?
You know what they say, you're never really as good as your resume, right?
This is an example of something the board would approve. So certainly it's not going to be anything you don't like going on the air by yourself. But is that
Other ideas, I think it's good.
okay? So commissioner profiles, it can be staff profiles as well. If you want to pick on John or
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Angry manager.
First, he's
There's
first.
my profile right here.
Remember your microphone.
Yeah. Our facilities manager is one of my favorite guys around here, so I'd love to do a profile on him too. So those are some examples. Any other, asking for the board's vision. You don't have to have a complete answer today, but any other ideas the board would have? Nick and I are really looking for your feedback on what do you think the public would most appreciate or get the most from, learn the most from.
You want to come up, Louise? You want to come up and identify yourself again,
Well, that's a good idea.
please?
This is just kind of a
Is it-
public comment, but
Just so we can pick you up, though, just to identify yourself.
Louise Kallstrom, and I like to find out historical data on where I live or visit. So having historical photographs, historical narratives about how the county came to be and how the cities and towns in the county and the industries that they supported when they came here. So
Good idea.
We're gonna put the History Channel out of business.
Yeah, good.
Hey, we're going to have such great viewership that we won't even have to worry.
I could even come up with a name for you. Now you know a little more about Curry County. And those could be a series of short pieces that would be educational, absolutely.
Can I jump in here after Louise?
Please.
You want to identify yourself,
I'm
please?
Carolyn Johnson, Community Development Director. I wanted to know, would there be an interest in extending kind of PR advertising opportunities to other nonprofits or agencies? I'm thinking like the Wild River Land Trust, South Coast Development Council, Pennies for Pooches, maybe the school district. I mean, if this is running 24/7 and you have other governmental style or nonprofit agencies that want to get a message out, and they really are a big part of our county, would that be okay? So that was one question.
County Council?
I was thinking along similar lines. I know the board here, you're also the board of, I think, the Transportation District, you're the board of the 4-H, I think, and then we also have a fair. I've heard the fair mentioned a time or two. I think starting with our more closely aligned, or even the ones where the board is fulfilling a dual role, I think that makes sense. And starting with those that you, again, you are approving their budgets and those kind of things makes sense. And then just kind of seeing the ones we have existing contractual relationships with perhaps might make sense. But essentially, I think, Carolyn, it sounds like you're talking about the idea of a local PSA, more or less, similar to what Charles had talked about with the Ad Council PSAs. I'm just trying to draw an analogy, really.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
And not necessarily a video or anything, even if it was just a picture. Wild Rivers Land Trust, who we are, or I know Pennies for Pooches is always trying to advertise. For that matter, state parks, they have things going on,
Just
so-
almost like a calendar.
Well, not even really a
Not
calendar,
really a
but
calendar of events,
as
but-
the 24 hours are going by and it's the middle of the night and you get up and you're, okay, I'm gonna watch this. You get to see things from all over the county,
Oh, God.
so.
So there's a few different
Give you something
strands
to
here.
do
I'll,
tonight.
I'll try to tug on gently. For general public access as well as educational access, that's what that second channel we discussed is kind of the last phase of your vision of development here would be more than natural home for. That doesn't mean you're prohibited from promoting local nonprofit organizations in a non-commercial manner. Certainly everything Mr. Huddle discussed as far as Transportation District, 4-H County Fair, existing contractors, that's government access that essentially the county's a co-producer of. And state parks, that would be an example of state government that pretty much already have your consensus. Anything from ODOT state parks is already fair game. They produce something, we're happy to carry it. If it's a PSA you would like us to make for nonprofit XYZ, there's the question of who pays for it, because does the county want that coming out of their production budget?
Well, I wasn't
So-
thinking of a PSA. I was
Mhm.
just thinking, I mean, because most of these agencies already have their own little advertising blurbs, that if it was just a picture, you know, I mean, just to start with. But anyway, that was the
County
thought.
Council?
Again, if we start to get into the issue of, you know, us selecting who, you know, gets into our government speech, as it were. And so that's where I'm most comfortable starting with the government entities that you all are, you know, co-leaders of. And then if we have contracts, for instance, Pennies for Pooches, you know, they essentially collect that's where people go to get a county dog license. So they're providing, you know, a service of the county. So that's I see a lot easier way to say Pennies for Pooches makes more sense. But if we got into, again, some of the other entities you mentioned, I think some of the ones that we're members of
South
would
Coast Development
make
Council,
sense, right?
like them?
The ones that we have membership in could make sense. So maybe we are members or not of the Forest Collaborative. I'm not really sure. So I think we are. I don't know. So I think perhaps listing our memberships might make sense. Listing the groups we're a membership of would make sense. So I would like it to have the more I can really get a direct link to.
Well, but I
the
think,
county
again, this
business.
can be informal
Thank you.
communication
We're
between Charles and
trying to manage this
County
meeting.
Council.
I agree, Mr. Chair.
On items like that.
Carolyn, does
Yeah,
that
that
make
answers my
sense?
question, but the obvious follow-up question is then is it on the board's mind when you want to get that second channel going?
I
Let's
think,
do the first one
I
first.
think, yeah,
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
look big picture, so,
I,
okay.
Under your franchise agreement,
that arises from one of the individuals out in the, you know, the audience, but
If I may interject, Mr. Chairman, to answer Commissioner Gould's question. So exactly, we want to make your first channel succeed, and then we can talk about making a second channel succeed. And it's my interpretation of the franchise agreement, and the county council can correct me, of course, is that you need to provide a consistent level of original programming every month on your first channel, to justify your first channel continuing to exist. But then if you conduct a needs assessment and you have consistent high-level programming on your first channel, that's the point when you can open the door to having the cable company add a second channel for you.
So are they gonna be
We already installed the technology under the Part A of your contract that we already executed to have the technology in place here where we could turn on a second channel today. But it's a matter of justifying its existence to the cable company to actually open that door.
So are they going to be looking at our ratings to determine whether we're being successful?
well, it's
or-
not rated, I don't think.
level of
rated,
programming.
time-
It's level of
time, and
programming.
It's very
Yeah.
specific in the
Yeah.
contract.
Okay, they
Very
don't care whether
specific.
anybody watches it or not, right?
It's not true. We don't have Nielsen ratings, if that's what you're asking.
So when you're talking about a needs assessment, let's just hypothetically say we're 6 months into this. We're doing great, we're rolling along. And when you talk about a needs assessment, would that be something where we would kind of put out some feelers to all these different groups and say, is there interest? Is there, you know?
Through the chair, to answer Director Johnson's question, our vision of how that will go is that as your service provider, we essentially would conduct a needs assessment via a variety of media, print, email, flyers, phone calls, solicitation at a televised meeting, spots we'd put on the channel, combination of all those things to try to hit everybody from every angle, because some folks are going to watch TV but not have a landline phone number or vice versa. So try to hit the county as best we can, hit the different communities, not just here in Gold Beach, but hit Port Orford, hit Agnes, hit Brookings, hit Harbor, and then collect that into a report we deliver to the board saying, here's what, as best we can gather, the level of interest in actually being productive and using a channel for public access and educational access purposes, including the schools and that too. And at that point, it'd be up to the board whether they want to pull the trigger on that.
But this is a conversation, in my
Sure.
opinion, this is a conversation for another day, down the road.
And it's not in this agreement, right? Okay.
Don't leave.
I had one more question.
Yeah.
I had one more question. I'm sorry. I'll sit down then. If I can come back, I will yield to you.
I actually, I had one more answer for
Charles,
Carolyn
Charles.
first, real quick. Is that something that other government access channels do provide is commonly known as a community calendar or a community bulletin board. You've probably heard that on your local NPR station sort of thing. Just to be perfectly clear, though, if we open the door to that, that's a community calendar or something we can play in the channel in between programming. It's usually open for basically slate, sort of still image. It's not advertising, but underwriting sort of messages saying, here's where you can find out more about this university educational program. Here's where you can find out more about the local animal shelter or about the Rotary Club or whatever it is. They have to be either government, educational, nonprofit organizations, and it has to be equitable. Any nonprofit that comes a knocking gets equitable treatment, because otherwise it's us as Brandt Media or it's you as the county playing favorites, and that's what we don't want to get into.
Just quickly, go.
If I could, quick on
Okay.
Carl taking the secret road, there is already conversation in the community among the libraries, the educators, and some of people such as Rotary, the Oregon Community Foundation representatives, towards getting ready for January 1st, 2018, and starting to work at some point with Brandt towards getting that second channel going. We are looking at both content and financial support for a second channel. So we're building that interest, if you will, now.
But I think with some
But it-
reality for the time, we don't,
We understand
yeah.
that it's premature to
But I
come knocking
think
at your door now.
we're
certainly
a
hopeful.
good start.
You know, some of the grant cycles are such that we would need to start this spring to get grants lined up to be able to pay Brandt to do the programming for us. But we're moving in that direction, but we're not looking at, as I say, knocking on your door. We're looking at really, in my mind, can we have it open and running in January or the spring of 2018?
So are PEG funds available for this second channel?
Yes.
For capital equipment, yes.
Very
Okay.
important.
Oh, just for the equipment?
And you've already purchased.
Well, that was
the
a
part-
great
the-
thing. That was a recommendation with Brandt when we first worked on these proposals. They came back and said, wait a minute, if we do this and this, we're able to now to get this at essentially the same cost as the original proposal for these components that would allow us both. And that's
So the PEG
what
funds
they
are
did.
paying not only for the equipment, but also your,
No,
No.
no, but that they were able
Why
to
we're
buy the
looking for
equipment
grants.
that had the capabilities for the second channel rather than not do it that way.
oh, I see.
It was almost for exactly the same price as the original equipment. So
To
it was
answer
a
Commissioner Gould's question,
no-brainer.
the operating cost can't come out of PEG funds. So essentially, that's a portion of your franchise fee you're collecting from the cable company. The PEG funds can pay for capital equipment for public education and or government access. The equipment you purchased at our recommendation from Telview, you already have a 2-channel server. It's running right now. It's just the second channel isn't programmed because it isn't going anywhere. The minute Charter puts a second modulator in there and tells the county and tells us, go ahead and light it up, we'll swap 2 cords in and then you got a second channel. So it's essentially it's turnkey, you're ready to go.
Okay, so
This
you guys were
Saturday,
planning
this-
ahead.
This Saturday, our library here in Gold Beach has a musical program with 2 local residents. Think of that being high school kids being taught how to film it, take the film to a studio and edit it, and then it's shown on that second channel. That's what that public and education.
Well, there could be some really good things go
There's
on
some
there.
fabulous things
School
you can do.
programs, et cetera.
And we're and the community is looking forward to doing that.
Cool.
Thank you.
I promise to be brief, thank you, I
No,
know,
that's-
thank you. In the interest of public awareness, and I really like the concept Ms. Johnson mentioned there in the nonprofits. Could this be cost effective if we listed the nonprofits and just in the initial process on this channel, because I don't know who they all are, it'd be maybe somewhat of an inventory or something. Even carrying that a little further, possibly you could click on their logo and get their website. Is that something we could do that wouldn't give you an additional headache?
Well, I'm looking for direction from the board as far as what the board would like on your channel. If you want a community calendar that featured nonprofits, I
don't know
don't think
about
it's
the-
be a matter of us or the county hunting down every nonprofit to put them
I
on a
don't
list.
think
It'd be
that's what
more,
you meant.
I'm with,
it'd be
no,
more
I'm
up
with
to,
you.
the model of community calendars I'm familiar with is it's up to the nonprofits or the educational institutions to submit their content for inclusion in the community calendar, not the other way around. I'm not going to go look for them.
I think the community calendar could be something that we're not quite ready for, but listing those nonprofits in a very academic way and letting the public know who these entities are. Maybe you can't even do the websites initially, but just simply listing them is, and it might generate their interest in everything your vision here and what you're trying to accomplishing. Just a simple listing.
Again, so long, you know, and I defer that back to Charles and County Council. We don't want to go where what's good for one is good for all on this first government channel. We don't want to open that.
Right, we
that up.
specifically kind of limited our goals here. Again, getting the first one right, I think is
Correct.
what Commissioner Gold said, so.
That
that's
doesn't
all.
preclude us
Yeah.
from making lists, you know,
Maybe
and
preparing
planning for
the
the
second
future
channel.
for a second channel. But we just definitely don't want to open that
I understand.
that door to where we have to then offer for everyone, and all of a sudden it's not what we, you know, for our original goals and our original concept.
This is the
And
first
you
and not
gave
the.
us a lot of caution on that a year ago, a lot of caution.
Mr. Chairman, this is the first and not the last opportunity for the board's input on content. Should you decide to develop a community calendar and develop a process by which nonprofits are treated equitably, then please bring that to our attention, and we're happy to develop that. Again, it is a common feature at a government access station, so it's something you can do, but if it's too early in the life of this channel to do that, then I perfectly understand. So everything that you see on screen, and just for the benefit of the viewers at home, the Curry County Park individual profiles, inviting public feedback, I should say inviting feedback and not feeding, historical pieces in Curry County, agencies that the Board of Commissioners co-convenes, such as the Transportation District 4-H County Fair, existing county contractors that perform county services essentially, such as Pennies for Pooches, and county membership groups such as the South Coast Development Council, and of course I would add in that the state and federal county associations. Those are all areas of comfort, I take it, from the board for content. Those Commissioner.
And again, on any, I'm sorry, because Commissioner Huxley, but on any, you know, concerns or flags that County Council has, then I just would again open that for him to have direct access to you to say, you know, let's verify this first.
Sure, I'll work with Brandt Media, and then we'll most likely bring back a list in some form of
I
report
think
at a
that's
public
the
meeting
good
and
way to
say,
do it
here's
there.
where we are,
Okay.
and so we keep the board informed. The board can give some kind of consensus, as it were. So.
And keep us, you know, so we keep within the legal parameters of where we should be.
Well, one more idea that my compatriot Nick had, I'd just like to run by you, is what about a feature-length piece on the economic situation? Can be more broad-based, the economy in general, or more specifically, the budget situation that the county's been put in due to the federal funding or lack thereof that has come about. Is that something the board would like to explain?
Did you say a feature piece or a
Like
feature?
a feature length, a
Okay.
custom half-hour production, ideally. Is that the sort of thing the county might be interested in, just to try to explain it in a way to voters and taxpayers that perhaps a county meeting is less ideally suited to kind of get the voices of different folks on camera in different locales around the county and really try to delve into it in a way that's a little more approachable?
I don't know. You know, as the budget, you know, meetings and so forth evolve, perhaps I'm sort of defer that to, in part to Louise. I don't really know. I don't have an answer or an opinion on that myself at this point.
I'm sorry.
Carolyn Johnson
It's really hard
does.
to sit down. This is pretty exciting stuff.
You want to identify yourself,
Carolyn
please, again?
Johnson, Community Development Director. And this is what I had wanted to ask about, were the profiles. The profiles on commissioners and others are really good, but I think, I mean, if it would work within the context of the agreement, it would be really cool to have a profile of one of your state, one of your senators in Washington. you know, things they have to say. I'm sure that they put out press releases and offer interviews and stuff on their own websites, but there's so much that they do now that are, you know, they're going to have to be looking at counties like this, especially with the new administration, and it just seems like it'd be a nice way to get that out. So, and they probably already have stuff that they are working on that is on their website. So that was my
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is that something the board is interested in?
Commissioner Boyce, Commissioner Gold,
I might have some conditions on that.
or you want just to
I'd want to hear, what are
about
they,
it,
what,
you know.
what are they doing relative to Curry County? I don't know, I want to know the whole scope. I would want to zero in on things that are applicable to Curry County.
In a general sense, it can be said that they're not very sensitive to rural Oregon counties. And there's some progress, and there's some optimism. Maybe there's some hope.
Let's just put it this way. If they're asked to tell us, what are you doing, and they're going to be televised, what are you doing to help the rural counties? I think they would be more aware.
Well,
Possibly.
possible.
You know,
The likelihood of getting Merkley or Wyden down here, I think, is perhaps minimum, but perhaps your local representatives.
But as Ms. Johnson said, they probably have some information that they can present fairly easy, but also their staff, plural, excuse me, they are approachable and they are available. It might even be something we want to do on an interview of one of their key staffs or one of the regional representatives. Just throw that out there.
The other point I would make, commissioners, is that, again, this is your county 20 hours from your county money.
Sure.
Do you want to spend that talking to a state or a federal representative? And it's on your dime and
Good
not
point.
theirs.
I would just
So,
leave that open to thought, you know,
Down the road.
I'd
the
want to
road.
think about that.
thought down the road.
so strike that.
Yeah, I just don't think we want a political diatribe.
No.
Excuse me.
Well, we'll leave that for when the public access channel starts up. So at this point, commissioners, we already talked about master calendars. So at this point, unless my compatriot Nick, who's been very, very quiet and patient on the phone this whole time, unless he wants to jump in with any points I might have missed. Otherwise, I'm just want to open it up to questions from those in the room and especially, of course, the commissioners about where we go from here.
I saw a quick hand out there. Dave, you want to come up and identify yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is David Barnes. I just have one quick question for you. This is on channel 182 on Charter TV.
Correct.
What about, does it exist on like DirecTV or Dish or other satellite services?
Regrettably, the nature of the beast is that DirecTV, Dish, and so forth, while there are certain provisions of federal law that require them to pick up local broadcasters, so you can get your Medford broadcast TV stations on Dish or Direct, cable, they don't pick up cable access stations simply because there's like one satellite that covers the West Coast. So if Dish or Direct wanted to run public access stations, they'd have to pick up Access Humboldt, they'd have to pick up Rogue Valley Community Television, they'd have to pick up CCTV in Salem, they'd have to pick up Portland Community Media, they'd have to pick up like 100 different channels across the West Coast. They're not going to do that. So that's why.
County Council?
So do you have
Did
internet?
that answer?
Pardon me, yeah, just a follow-up question though,
So
but
you can
could you,
there.
Charles, say where else they can view other than cable? Can you
So
remind everyone? again of what
again,
they
the
can
the
view?
county website, and the county website is under redesign through a separate contract, so I take no responsibility for its status right now. It is improving, I'll say that much, is that the county website will have both links to our video on-demand files for every county meeting, and when we start rolling out these county productions, those will be on there as well. And as Commissioner Huxley said, there will be a player box on the website within the next week or two at most, which will have the live Curry County Civic channel stream. So anybody with internet access on their mobile device or with their laptop or desktop computer will be able to view that stream as well.
I did, while we were talking on as far as access on the website, and I've talked with Charles previously and also with Nick, and I'm just bringing this up as a request for consensus at this time, just strictly consensus, but to allow Charles, Brandt Media, to have very restricted access to the commissioner homepage, our current website, remote access to that homepage and to the commissioner's web page, so that they, and also to the planning department. I mentioned in conversation with Carolyn Johnson this morning, she said, could we do that also, so that they can take care of that posting of the link as soon as they processed it through the Telview equipment after each of these meetings, rather than they send me a link or they send Carolyn a link and then we send it somewhere else, just to have them go indirect and post that link.
So bottom line, it's just going to expedite the
It's going to
process.
expedite it, it's going to simplify it, and it's going to speed it up.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm asking just for.
Sure, you can't really make decisions in a work session, but it's kind of a
just
consensus.
Generally
and then
consensus.
I'm very comfortable if we
Okay.
come back to our regular meeting and then
Okay.
reiterate it.
Okay.
And you could probably put that on the consent calendar, right?
Or in board and commission
Yeah.
reports.
Yeah.
So
I'm fine.
yes.
Okay,
I'm good with that.
okay, so we all are fine with that.
Thank you, commissioners, and thank you to Nick on the phone for making sure that was on the radar here as well. Nick, did you have anything you wanted to chime in with? I don't want to leave you out here.
Chair and Commissioners, if you can hear me, I just want to say thanks for the direction that you've given us today. And really, I was just sitting back and listening, taking notes to make sure that we drive the ship in the way that you would, that would make you proud. And so, thank you for all the feedback. That's really what I was here for. I don't have anything further to add unless you have any specific questions for me or Charles.
And for purposes of the record, that was Nicholas Brandt, the
Thank you.
chief principal of Brandt Media.
Commissioner Boyce?
Nick, thank you very much, and I did not know you're on the phone, so hopefully I didn't embarrass myself. But I want to commend the previous board and you, Mr. Huxley, Commissioner Huxley, for an incredible job well done. Yes, there was a perception out there in the public that why is this a priority and why would we spend the money on this? And that was clarified for me some time ago. And I just want to extend appreciation on that. In the overall aspect of business, we have some serious competitors up and down the Oregon coast. Well, not just the Oregon coast, but even Del Norte, and if you want to go south. And in the interest of economic development, the interest of I always reference rural counties, what they are dealing with and trying to stay afloat. This is more than just a really positive tool. This is something that gives us opportunity to build on, to grow. I haven't read this agreement or contract, but I'm pretty confident that it's going to cover all of our bases in a good, secure way. And so it's something that we can point to when we're dealing with Bandon, when we're dealing with Lincoln County, just for example. And it's not just to promote the tourism; it's to promote to the life and health of this county. And I just again really want to extend gratitude and say a job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
So
Charles
how many
and-
other
and Nick.
counties have this type of television channel?
I can testify from my other hat. There are 2 counties to your east that run in cooperation with several cities that run these sort of channels.
You don't know statewide? Or?
Statewide, I can say the most successful operations I'm familiar with, as far as the best combination of all 3 legs of that stool, public educational government, is obviously Portland Community Media is the 500-pound gorilla, and they have a beautiful facility I was able to tour late last year when we had a regional conference of access media centers. CCTV in Salem has been a long-running successful operation over in Salem. Salem, like Gold Beach, Curry County, doesn't have a native TV broadcast center there. They're sort of overwhelmed and ignored by the broadcasters, respectively, in Portland and Eugene. So they've filled a really key role, and they do a lot of youth sports and covering a lot of educational events there as well. RVTV, I don't want to wear that hat right now, so I don't want to speak for them, but obviously I would say that's a successful operation. There are other suburbs of Portland, such as Gresham, called Metro East TV, that do a great job. There's a few, of course, that have fallen by the wayside over the years. I think Klamath County is one of those that's pretty much collapsed. Also Douglas County, I don't think there's any sign of life there right now. Coos Bay to your north, they actually do have a PEG channel up there.
County or Coos Bay? Sorry, okay.
I think it's Coos County, but I don't want to go swear on the Bible and go on the record for that. But just for my web searching, I know they have some public access programming originating from there as
So
well.
it sounds like we're on the right track here. That's good.
Absolutely.
County
And
Councilor.
Chair and Commissioner Gold, I just want to chime in there. I think one of the great things about this program is that what Charles mentioned for counties that are currently doing this, he mentioned large metropolitan areas, large statistical metropolitan areas. You guys are blazing the trail as far as bringing this type of government content to more rural counties, and so that's why we're excited to be a part of it.
Good.
Thank you, Nick.
And I would say that this is, I think, the fourth county in Oregon that would have an HD live streaming channel of their government content. I think Jackson County, for obvious reasons I'm pretty familiar with, but also up there in Multnomah and Portland, and over there just east of Portland as well. Those are HD online, and in fact, thanks to Comcast being a little more cooperative than Charter, they actually have HD cable channels for Metro East and for Portland Community Media as well. Charter has been a stone wall of resistance as far as granting HD channels to PEG operations, and of course,
the HD being high definition.
Right, and we're HD live stream, we're stepping on that to SD for your channel because that's all they're giving us to do.
So question.
When your franchise agreement comes up, you do have the opportunity to push for that, of course.
Since they granted us this HD status, are they going to be harder on us as far as coming up with the content?
To clarify,
et cetera?
the cable company's only giving you SD status. They had to fight to
okay.
get HD cable channels, those respective local governments up north. Your HD portion is the equipment we've installed here to actually record your proceedings, and the live stream and the video on demand, we've made that available in high definition. So you've spent the money necessary to make that happen for yourselves through
Okay, but
through
as
Brandt
far
Media.
as Charter, we're not HD.
And,
Well, then I just won't subscribe to them.
and that's a factor of your franchise agreement. So yeah, if you want to tell people where to go to where you look your best, I certainly would suggest if they have decent internet, send them to your website, send them to your live stream, send them to your video on demand on the web. The cable channel looks light years better than it did last year when you had occasional intermittent service on there. But certainly it's going to be crisp, clean, original format on your web streams and on your VOD.
All right. County Council, do you have any other comments or
No, thank you,
questions,
Mr. Chair. Nope, unless there's a question.
Just a thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Charles. Thank you, Nick. Thank you all. We're going to adjourn this workshop. It's 11:58. Oh,
I have some presentations
hold
to
on.
make. Reports. It's today the day. Quickly.
No, that would be
Next
typically the
Wednesday.
general meeting, right?
Understand.
Yes.
Yeah, next one.
It'll wait.
Commissioner comments.
You hungry?
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
On behalf of Brandt Media, we'd like to thank the entire county for making all this happen. And just like Mr. Brandt said, we really are working with the county to really blaze the trail there. And I want to specifically thank county staff who worked with us during the build process, specifically your facilities department, were extremely cooperative and helpful, and we couldn't have got it done in time for your first meeting this year without their help.
Thank you. Thank you for the compliments to the staff. And it's now 11:59. We're going to adjourn this workshop. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.